I believe the year was 2002. It was a different time then. We were just out of the 90s. Boy bands were still a thing. Christina Aguilera was still a genie in a bottle that you had to rub the right way. Eyebrows had not yet recovered from the scourge of the 90s. Cell phones were around, but you still had to pay like 25 cents per text message and hit the number 1 3 times to get the letter C in a text. iPhones were not a thing. It was a different time. It was a different world. And I managed to find the first season of The Bachelor available for streaming. It was not on Hulu. It was not on Netflix. It was not on Amazon Prime. I had to go deep into the internet, but I found a legal stream. A legal, not illegal. I found a legal stream that nobody can arrest me for. And I watched the first ever episode of The Bachelor. And I want to talk about it with you today. I'm so excited. Oh my god. Okay. Wow, where to begin?
The Bachelor.
I will start with Chris Harrison. Chris Harrison has been on like every single season of every single version of The Bachelor in existence.
Hi, I'm Chris Harrison. And no, I'm not The Bachelor.
And seeing him right there at the beginning is so weird because his voice is exactly the same. He delivers everything with exactly the same intonations that he does now. Like, he picked that personality when this series first started, and he has just stuck with it. And the other weird thing about Chris Harrison is that looking at him, baby Chris Harrison, he does kind of look a little bit more fresh-faced at that time, but he just looks now like he hasn't really aged. He's just like kind of tired and maybe needs a couple glasses of water. Like, he doesn't really look older. And you can immediately also see like the men's suits are different. They're like bigger, they're not really fitted. It looks so old, it looks so different. When they show the auditions of the women who wanted to be on the show.
This video is coming all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Dallas, Texas, Anchorage, Alaska, New York City, the best city in the world.
Look at the little like date and time in the corner of the screen. Oh my god, do you can you picture what video cameras looked like at this time? I feel like this might have still been back when they had like, it was a big, bulky video camera, and you would have to record something, and then there's a special like VHS tape, and you would put the little like recorded tape from the camera into the VHS tape, and then put it in a VCR. One interesting thing I've noticed about like the passage of time and the evolution of terminology is that with the advent of the DVD player and the fact that people have become accustomed to saying DVD player, they've stopped saying VCR and instead now say VHS player. So that's just a fun little anecdote for you. My absolute favorite thing that I saw in watching this episode was like the fashion and the makeup of the women, because this was before contouring became a thing. And if these women were doing all of their own makeup, I mean, it's pretty obvious because they're not professionally done up. It's like if this were to just suddenly be on ABC. It's really weird how even my own perceptions of the societal standard of beauty have changed over the years, that I've become so accustomed to seeing a certain thing and expecting a certain thing, and then to jump back in time to 2002, and probably these women were considered like super hot and very well dressed and very well done up for 2002, but it's just, I don't have that perception. Like, to me, they look so different, and it's so weird. They did their own hair, they did their own makeup, contouring wasn't a thing. Their eyebrows are still suffering from the 90s. It will be many years of careful brow gardening before they are able to grow to the current socially acceptable brow thickness. The like full lips trend hadn't really happened yet, so a lot of these women have like very kind of natural looks. You know, there's not a lot of fillers or Botox. It's interesting to look at now after having seen, you know, all of these Insta models and having watched The Bachelor now and seeing how like perfect and, you know, outlined and everything that these women look. It's so weird to look at these women from 2002 who did all their own makeup before Latisse, before like you really understood makeup. Like all of the layers of makeup are pretty new. Like the whole, you know, blur powder and like doing all of these layers of stuff. If I remember correctly, back then makeup was just like you put on a foundation. There's like 6 shades to choose from, so you hope you find one that matches your skin tone. You put on a powder blush. Again, there's about 5 shades to choose from, so you hope you find one that looks good. There's lip liner, lipstick, maybe lip gloss, brow pencils existed. And then there's also like just one type of powder you put on to kind of, you know, control shine. Oh, and concealer was also a thing. Like that's kind of how I remember makeup from 2002. It was not this like box of products that do all of these different like blurring and pore perfecting and primer and all of that kind of stuff. It didn't really exist. The dewy skin look and the matte skin, like this was not really a concept. You just kind of like made your face look a little bit better and went about your day. Extensions weren't really a thing. Like I'm sure they existed, but they weren't the extensions that you see now, where they kind of just blend in seamlessly and create Victoria's Secret model hair. Extensions back then would have been a lot more obvious and also a lot more expensive, so these women didn't really have extensions. They just went on this show looking like the best made up version of themselves. And it's so strange to actually see real looking women on The Bachelor, where you can see like the flaws in their skin and you can see like a blemish that they tried to put concealer over but it got kind of cakey, and you can see when their hair is a little bit frizzy. And it's weird because they look like my friends. Because now the women on The Bachelor are basically all like Insta models. And in searching for the women to compete on this show for The Bachelor, they were apparently actually looking for a lot of qualities. Chris Harrison tells The Bachelor, whose name is Alex, Chris Harrison tells Alex that these women are all very educated.
2 doctors, 2 lawyers, 10 women have either already gotten their master's degrees or are in the process of obtaining their graduate degrees.
You know, doctors and lawyers and a lot of professional women. Although it is kind of funny because you know how they have the title cards when someone is on the screen speaking, doing their interview, and it has their name and their age and their occupation? Well, for Trista, her occupation is listed as Miami Heat dancer, and she's also like a pediatric therapist, but the thing that they choose to focus on is Miami Heat dancer. And then there's another woman whose name I forget, who works for an insurance company as an auto adjuster, but on the side she also works for Hooters. And so her little title card says Hooters waitress. Not auto adjuster, Hooters waitress. So there's definitely like ABC is kind of doing one thing, but also starting to figure out another thing. And it's interesting to see almost the thought processes that are visible as they move through the different components of the show that led to the show that we have today. For example, when the women get out of the limo to meet the Bachelor, they're not in like ball gowns. Like they look nice, but they're not in these like ball gown prom dresses. And they basically just walk up, they introduce themselves to him, he introduces himself to them, and then they shake hands and the women go into the mansion.
Hi, I'm Alex.
Amber, nice to meet you.
Amber, very nice to meet you.
And now there's like this gimmick and people wear weird outfits or like carry melons or something. I can see why they ended up progressing to that, because the part of the show where each contestant meets the Bachelor is kind of boring. It feels very repetitive and it's like, oh, okay, more people. So I can see why they tried to sort of jazz that up with the weird little introductions, although it still isn't great. And I feel like they still know in the current seasons of the show that that shake hands meet thing is not really all that entertaining, and people don't even really like the gimmicks, but they probably just can't think of a better way to do it. So they just keep with that formula. I don't know, maybe in season like 407 of The Bachelor, when we're all like robots, they'll think of some sort of more interesting like robot introduction. And also the whole look and makeup thing affects the Bachelor himself as well, because you can see the flaws in his skin. Like, it's not just the women who look like normal people. The Bachelor just looks like a normal dude, and it's so funny to be so used to like the really chiseled, done up men that they put on The Bachelor, to see this normal looking kind of doofy guy in like a really oversized suit.
That is hilarious and great.
I like that they point out that he wasn't like an attractive child. No, don't worry, later, like he gets good, it's fine. I love during the introductory scene when we first see Chris Harrison and he's explaining the concept of the show. It's basically just Chris Harrison walking and trying to make eye contact with a camera that's somewhere above him and explaining the show and like trying not to trip. It's great. It's just a single pan shot. Chris Harrison just walking and explaining. Ugh, Chris Harrison. I had actually forgotten. I remember this being a component of the show, but I had actually forgotten about it until I saw it in the first episode. I remember how before a rose ceremony, they used to have that room that the Bachelor or the Bachelorette would go into, and it would have photos of all the contestants, and they would have a few like long pensive shots with tense music of the Bachelor or Bachelorette looking at the photos and picking them up and being like, to kind of increase the tension of, oh my God, who are they gonna pick? They're deciding right now. And they had that in this first episode, except there's a really great / creepy shot where you see the photos and the camera's doing a slow pan and you hear the audio of like the women talking and laughing. And it just feels like something that would be in a horror movie. Oh my God, the women's makeup and the thin eyebrows and like the slightly frosted lip and the two tendrils of hair in the front and the unironic chokers and like there's like some clips and barrettes and the dresses. Oh, the dresses. I think one of the women is wearing a dress that the cut and kind of general design of it remind me of a dress that I wore to my 8th grade dinner dance. Different color scheme, similar idea. The Bachelor himself, he's this guy named Alex. He's 31. He has an education from Harvard. He has a master's from Stanford. He has an actual job in finance or something out in San Francisco. Like, he actually does seem like a good catch. And then later they get into the habit of picking the rejected candidate from The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, like the second to last person, and making them the next Bachelor or Bachelorette. So you kind of end up with people who are sort of like career reality stars as opposed to people who are actual people. That was the start of it. It started with this fairly normal, well-educated dude. He was a good, eligible bachelor. And then everything just went off the rails. And I don't know if it's that he has some strange manner of speaking or if he's just not used to being on TV and is trying to enunciate or is perhaps reciting something that was written for him or that he wrote ahead of time. But he kind of talks very specifically and with a lot of emphasis sometimes. And it is very noticeable and not natural.
And then I think having time to dedicate to nothing but that is a great luxury.
They also keep saying how hot the Bachelor is, and it's so funny because he also just looks like a real dude. Like, he seems good looking, but he doesn't seem so hot like they keep saying he is.
He's cute. Ooh, he's HOT hot.
Some of them are really awkward in their little interviews that they show when the women are being introduced to the Bachelor.
I can see the instant reaction from guys when I meet them and I tell them I'm an attorney. They're, ew. I don't know if they just hate attorneys like the rest of the world or if they're just intimidated by the fact I have a career. Normally, I do not kiss on the first date. I can probably tell you 2 times that I have kissed on the first date. Sex on the first date is a definitely no. Never done it and never will.
Oh, Rhonda. No.
My students would not be shocked that I was doing this because they definitely think I'm a fun, wild teacher. Their parents, on the other hand, might get me booted out of school, but no, just joking.
Why, teacher? Why? No. Her voice reminds me when she speaks a little bit of Cyndi Lauper, but her whole demeanor is just no. That girl from Kansas with the huge rack. She seems sweet.
Get the opinion that I'm very innocent, but I'm actually very different. I am very open sexually with my partners, and one of the craziest things I've ever done was purchase a trapeze for some entertainment.
I don't understand the trapeze thing. What would that be? How would you hang that in your home? Did she mean trapeze, or did she mean like a swing or a pole? Trapeze.
Why am I lucky enough?
This is a good story. I'm lying in bed, and it was on the morning radio, I guess. They were talking about the show, and they're yapping about how he's great, he's smart, he's funny, he's this and that and this and that. And I turned to my dog, and I said, God, I haven't met anybody like that in a long time. And he looks at me, and he goes, give it a try. And so
That is great. He speaks.
yeah, well, you know.
You knew what he meant.
I knew what he was talking about.
That's great.
I do talk to the dog.
And I feel like now with, Instagram and social media and people getting more accustomed to being in front of a camera in their day-to-day lives has probably affected how people hold and conduct themselves on reality shows. Like now I feel like also the women have really good posture and they really kind of know how to hold and carry themselves and how to kind of maintain like neutral but positive expressions when there's cameras around, but they don't know specifically if the camera's on them or not. And these women were perhaps not accustomed to that, and you see them making very unflattering faces.
You know the boy that you like is going to be there, so you're just kind of giddy about it.
Or there are points where they're just kind of interacting with the process, like a normal person just going through the steps of this production. They're not like, I'm on The Bachelor, like I need to be very, very serious. They kind of make faces, they kind of let their surprise show when somebody they would have perhaps not anticipated gets a rose.
Rhonda.
Oh, when he's giving out the roses, there's this really awkward thing that they do where he gives them each a kiss on the cheek.
Kathy, will you accept this rose?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
And 1, gross. 2, the women are kind of leaning over the pedestal that has the roses on it, and he's like leaning forward only a little bit, and it looks so uncomfortable. I can see why they kind of, moved things around in some of the later seasons. And also they kind of switched seemingly from like a cheek kiss. I still see cheek kisses, it happens, but the more standard thing is to kind of just like do a hug, which I think is better, because kissing 25 people on the cheek or 15 or whatever, kissing that many people on the cheek, one after the other, after the other, after the other, like there's gonna be some chapping that's happening there. And you can't like reapply lip balm, because then the next person you kiss on the cheek's gonna have like a big old greasy smudge. Amber takes it very hard when she doesn't get picked.
I'm a good person.
tied up a lot of her self-esteem in this process. I love when he kind of points out that as he's handing out the roses, he looks around the room and all the women who have roses are just beaming and all the women who don't look pissed. Like, I love that they acknowledged that. What I would love for the next season of The Bachelor, one, for them to change the name of The Bachelorette to The Spinster and adjust the show accordingly, because as I mentioned in another video, back in ye olden times, the equivalent word in the English language for bachelor was spinster. And the two words have evolved in our common vernacular very, very differently. So I would love if they changed the name of The Bachelorette to The Spinster and either kept the show exactly as is or changed it to like more of an introvert dating show. That would be interesting. But the other thing I would love is if they had a season of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or The Spinster where they found a contestant who had just somehow never watched the show before and had no idea how anything is done. Like, they don't know that they're supposed to bring semi-professional makeup products and like do a full face all the time. They don't know to get extensions. They don't know the procedures of a rose ceremony. Like, I want someone in a rose ceremony who has no idea what's going on, who has no idea that you're supposed to maintain like kind of a visual politeness because the camera could be on you at any second. I just want someone who has no clue. And not even just as a contestant, like maybe I just want them to be the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, someone who's completely unfamiliar with the franchise. And they give them as little prep as possible. Like, don't let them watch the show beforehand, that they're just like, here. And then, you know, contestants are getting out of the limo and doing these weird things, and the person's just standing there like, oh God, why? That's what I want. That's the television that I want. Pretty much every season of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, I tell myself when it starts, like, I don't care, I'm not gonna watch it. And then I get really stressed out and I just want to watch like the most mindless TV possible where other people can cry and I'll cheer about it. And so then I end up watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I'm a good person. Oh, Amber. I wonder if Chris Harrison knew when he started doing this, like in that first moment when he's trying to deliver this narration and walking the whole time. Like, if he knew that, oh, how many years later is it now? This was 2002. It's 2019. If he knew that 17 years later, he would still be doing this, he would be a producer and he would be this would just be a thing. Like, did he know? Did little baby-faced Chris Harrison know what he was getting himself into? I mean, probably. He's probably made a lot of money off of this. I love that they were probably trying to think, how can we make this info dump explanation more visually interesting? And their solution was just like, we're going to put Chris Harrison outside and he's going to walk and talk. Ta-da! Oh, the woman who says that this is like a fairy tale and her dad would be so happy to like see her doing this.
You know how every father dreams of their little girl finding the perfect guy, little fairy tale. I mean, if this is going to be a fairy tale, I mean, how perfect would that be? My dad would be so proud.
What part of this seems like a fairy tale that your dad would support? No little girl was told bedtime stories by her parents of the beautiful princess who had to compete with 24 other princesses to win the hand of the prince and had to see him kiss the other princesses, and there was a bunch of roses and then some other guy named Chris Harrison who was like some sort of duke. The analogy crumbled almost immediately. The fairy tale would be like if she got out of the limo and he said, "Stop the presses." There's no presses, but he said, "Stop the presses." And she's the one. It's her. And then the entire show just shuts down. And then ABC sues them to recoup the losses of the income that they would have made from advertising during the season of the program. Despite the lawsuit, the two of them get married and they're still together today. That would be more of a fairy tale. Like, this is not a fairy tale. This is reality TV. That is the opposite of a fairy tale. One thing I do like about Alex is that he says with whom at one point.
And I really feel like I'm ready to find the person with whom I'm going to form a partnership that's going to last a whole lifetime.
What did Chris Harrison do before The Bachelor? Like, what was his thing? Do you know what Chris Harrison did before The Bachelor? Put it in the comments below. Or if you have a funny pretend version of what Chris Harrison did before The Bachelor, put that in the comments below as well. It's also funny to think that at this time in 2002, these women talk about like how hard dating is and how much of a struggle. And I feel like that's the case now. And I kind of just wonder how much has really changed.
I've given my number to like cab drivers, janitors, you name it.
Cab drivers, janitors. I don't know what to say to that woman. What would my friends and family do if I was on The Bachelor? How would they react to that? I don't know. I feel like I would just be the woman that's sitting in the background eating. All the other women are in the foreground of a scene and they're like bickering and fighting with each other, and then the camera just suddenly like pans out and there I am sitting like in the back corner with a plate of food held like really close to my face, and I'm just like eating and furtively looking around. That's what would happen if I was on The Bachelor. And I would not make it till the end. I would not be like one of the final two contestants. I would make it like a little bit over halfway. The Bachelor would probably be like, oh, Christina, like she's very mysterious and she's very like quirky and very interesting. And then the camera would just cut to like me talking to a bird.
Why on earth are you doing this?
Today I actually wore eyeshadow. I don't usually wear eyeshadow, but I just decided I wanted my eyelids to be yellow. It is within my power to make that happen on a temporary basis. So I guess I could make my eyelids yellow on a permanent basis if I got jaundice, like if I did something that affected my liver, then I could have permanently yellow eyelids and then die, but you know. I feel like it got dark while I was filming this. Is the end coming to take us all? Whatever. Have I said my actual name before in one of these videos? Because my YouTube name is Pug Mugsley, and that's also my Twitter handle. But that's obviously not my real name. So, you just call me Pug. It's fine. I like it. It's good.